Finally, we have new Apple stuff to talk about. And I've got so many thoughts on what was announced at the Spring Loaded event earlier this week. Hello and welcome back to Mark Ellis Reviews, and thank you as always for subscribing, and if you haven't subscribed, you know where that button is. So Apple has finally launched some new products. And the Spring Loaded event, which took place earlier this week, was really hotly anticipated. Now, if you read my preview of the event last week, you know that I thought this would be a completely iPad-only thing. As it turns out, I was completely wrong. And I'm really excited about a few of the things that Apple announced this week. And I'm also bored senseless with one thing in particular they've launched. So let's get into it. Just a few notes on the event itself. I think, as always, it was superbly put together. Not badly presented. You know, these people aren't naturals in front of the camera, but that's fine. They get on with it and they do a pretty good job bearing that in mind. But the production values are just superb. The transitions, as a video editor, I'll make a couple of quick observations of that. They're very, very clever, don't get me wrong. And I think they started off these video events doing these cool transitions where the camera flew around the campus and all that sort of stuff. They're still doing that, but they're going really over the top with it now, to the point where they dive into the little lake thing in the middle of the Apple campus and it goes underground and it goes, so you see whales, you do all that. It's all a little bit over the top. I don't mind that, Apple. It's a bit of a laugh. Just don't do too much of it because it does take some of the focus away from what you're announcing. They started off with a really big push on what they're doing in terms of the eco side of things, which is great. They then moved on to the Apple Card, and I don't have an Apple Card. So I didn't have much interest in that personally. I think the updates kind of relate mainly to a family version of the card or something. It was that moment where you just think, come on, Tim, get on with it. There was changes to the podcast side of things as well. New podcast app, new podcast subscription service. That's marginally interesting from my perspective. But again, we want to see new products. Oh, new iPhone. New iPhone colour, purple, spring-like. But it was a great event overall. I just love these hour-long things where they just get straight pretty much to the point and there's no clapping, there's none of that stuff. It's just slickly produced, a bit of fun, and you get all of the information you need in a very nice condensed form that you can follow, you can go back to. Just keep this up, Apple, please. Now, AirTags. This is a product that has been rumoured for ages and ages. I've kind of cleared a little bit steer of talking too much about it and commenting on it too much because I'd much rather wait and see what actually appears. It was clear that Apple were either having manufacturing issues, design issues, or potentially issues with the story they have to create around AirTags. And lo and behold, here they are. They look exactly like the renders that we've seen and the rumours. And yeah, they are little devices which you can use to track stuff. I do like the look of them. I think they're nicely designed, as you would expect from Apple, and you can personalise them. Apple has addressed the privacy concerns. That was something that bothered me, the fact that you could just have this little thing that you could essentially attach to anything or anyone and track it or their movements. But they made it very, very clear from the start that this is to track items, not people. And apparently if an AirTag is placed in your bag or in your pocket or something and it's not yours, your iPhone will alert you to the fact that it's there. They've got that right, I think, and I think it will allay any fears that people had or the tabloids might have kind of jumped on in terms of privacy concerns really with these kind of devices. Price-wise, $29, £29. That's not bad. It's not cheap, obviously. These are Apple devices. You're going to pay a little premium for them. But $29, that's not bad for one of these. And if you want four, you pay $99/99. The only problem with that is that for that, you just get the tag. And it's just this little round disc. It's like a coin. And that's okay if you're just going to put it into a pocket of something or a pouch or something like that. But if you want to attach them to something, you then have to start buying accessories. And it does start to get a little bit more expensive there. I am going to cover AirTags in more detail in another video when I actually get some. And I think the way Apple delivered the news about AirTags was quite smart. They downplayed them almost. Although they were right at the top of the event, the segment didn't last that long at all. It was a case of, we've created these tracking devices, they're very secure, they're not particularly expensive, they work brilliantly with your iPhone, they're here in May. So stay tuned for my full review of AirTags. Apple TV. Now, if you follow my Medium blog, you'll know that I wrote an article a little while ago about my reasons why I personally thought Apple should cancel the Apple TV. That didn't go down very well. As it turns out, and with hindsight, I didn't research that article enough. I kind of admitted from the start that I haven't used one for a very long time. But part of the reason I haven't used one for a long time is because I just don't really see where the Apple TV fits in my life. I like Apple TV Plus. I think it's early days for that service. I think it can go a long way. But yeah, the box has always just been that thing which, you know, you need a really good reason to be underneath my TV. And that never gave me it. However, this new one looks far more interesting, and it's not that different from the Apple TV 4K that it's replacing. It's got a new A12 Bionic processor. Great, it's going to be fast, we know that. And it supports high frame rate HDR, which is pretty cool. Apple is apparently working with some of the leading video creators and producers in the world to make sure that we can actually get some content that uses that technology. But it also means that if you are shooting, I don't think many people are, but if you are shooting Dolby Vision 10-bit HDR video with your iPhone 12 Pro, you can play it back perfectly on your brand new Apple 4K TV. But those weren't the things that I was most excited about with the new Apple TV. The first one, the remote, I never used the kind of outgoing Siri remote because, again, I never bought one of those Apple TVs, but I know very, very well how awfully that was received, not just by the tech press, but also by users. So this new remote looks much better. It's kind of a much thicker, chunkier design. There's no confusion about which end is the top. It's got a dedicated Siri button, a power button that will turn on and off your TV, obviously. And it's got more touch gestures as well, which I reserve judgment for that, because if you know me, you know that touch controls are a little bit, they're not the best things in my mind in terms of how to interact with devices. I'm just hoping that Apple's proficiency at kind of touch screens and touch input will make this a winner. And the other thing was this kind of really cool color balancing or color correction thing they've built in, where pick up your iPhone, put it in front of your TV, and the Apple TV uses the light sensor and the camera in your iPhone to correct the color on your TV. That's really cool. I just hope they've put it into the setup process, because if it's not in there, if you have to kind of go and find it as a setting to turn on, then no one's going to do it. So I'm just hoping that when you turn the Apple TV on, it will guide you through that process, because that sounds great, and it does mean that you'll get the best picture possible through your TV. So yeah, I'm quite excited about the new Apple TV, ironically, and I'll be getting one, I'll be testing it, and the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to use it as my main streaming box in this house, so we won't use anything else for that, and I'm going to give it a proper test, give it the test it deserves, and again, I will report back with a full review in the near future. I didn't honestly think the iMac was coming this month. I thought we might see it at WWDC, or worst case, later in the year. As it turns out, we now have a brand new iMac, and it has had a redesign, and I'm going to save my thoughts on the redesign fully until I actually get one sat behind me here replacing the old design. But it's had a bit of stick already. I think people aren't keen on the fact the chin is still there. I think part of the reason that chin is still there is because Apple wants to retain that iMac look. If you just had the kind of bezel-less design or near bezel-less design that you get with their Pro Display XDR, for example, it just looks like a monitor. There's no distinguishing it from a normal monitor really to an iMac. And as we know with Apple, even with their notch on the iPhone, they do tend to lean into these very product-specific design elements. And I just wonder if that's what the reason that chin is still there. It doesn't really need to be there. It is where the M1 sits and the logic board and everything sits, but they could just as easily hide that behind the screen. This is the danger with rumours and renders made by people who are kind of just guessing what Apple are going to do. It does raise expectations, and quite often Apple will never do anything like those renders. The biggest thing they've done, apart from make it very, very thin, is add all these really cool new colours, and they do look great. But the big addition is that M1. And I'm not surprised they've just put the M1 in this smaller iMac. So it's important to bear in mind that the bigger iMac, however big that's going to be, there's the 27-inch behind me, that one is going to be replaced. That is going to come later this year, clearly. I think we're looking probably Q3, maybe even Q4 of this year. So at the meantime, they've just given us the smaller iMac, which is now 24 inches, and they've put an M1 in it. And that makes total sense when you think about it, because just imagine how many older 21.5-inch iMacs are out there. You know, they'll be in kids' bedrooms, in studies for people that aren't that fussed about having the biggest screen, and they'll be quite old machines. And the same thing in hospitality. A lot of hotels use iMacs because they look good. That means there's a huge market out there waiting to upgrade their iMacs, and a lot of them will have that smaller screen. From my tests with the M1 MacBook Air and the M1 Mac Mini, we know that is an incredibly powerful chip. So just to put that into an iMac is a huge leap forward. It's something like 85% quicker than the outgoing model. There's all the marketing stuff you need: new colours, new design, really fast chip. It's going to sell like hotcakes. But I think it's really clear that the market for this smaller, brand new M1 iMac, is home use really. It's home users, people who don't have a huge amount of interest in top specs and great big screens. They just want a really cool iMac, basically, that's it. Not a bad price, $12.99 for the base level. That is the one that I'm going to get into review and test and use for a bit. And yeah, I'll come back with my thoughts on it. And the reason I'll get the base model is because I like to have a base level to work from to advise you on. Lastly, the M1 iPad Pro. Now, this is going to be my next video, which will come early next week. So I will reserve my full thoughts for that video. But it is without a doubt the most boring thing, in my opinion, that Apple launched at their spring-loaded event. The reason for that, from my perspective, is so simple. The iPad has been more powerful than pretty much anyone needs it to be for years. None of us, or very, very few of us, a tiny, tiny subsection of the market can make use of all that power that even the current generation iPad has. And actually, even the generation before that, and potentially the generation before that as well. The iPad Pro is just, it's got no competition. It's the best tablet you can buy. If anyone wants a tablet and they ask me, I always say, just get an iPad. I think most people would say the same thing. What else are you going to buy? A Samsung tablet? An Amazon Fire, whatever it's got? I don't even know what they're called. There's just no competition for them, and Apple is so far ahead. But that's part of the issue, because the hardware is miles ahead of both iPadOS and also most of the iPad apps that you can get. Now, leading up to the event, the main rumours were based around micro LED being put into the screen technology, and that did happen. And they did some really cool stuff with the screen, actually, but it was all kind of buried under this big announcement about the M1, where we had Tim Cook scaling the roof of the Apple campus, diving in Mission Impossible style to take an M1 chip out of a MacBook Air and put it into an iPad Pro. They're really flexing their muscles here, both in terms of tech and marketing, and it's like a two-fingered salute towards Intel. And again, fine, no problem with that. I had a problem with the Justin Long Intel adverts. I'll have more of a problem with Apple if they carry on doing this about the M1. We get it, Apple. You've nailed it. It's a brilliant chip. It just didn't need to go into the iPad. I love my cars, and it kind of makes me think of having a 2,000 brake horsepower car and chucking another 1,000 brake horsepower into it. No one's going to get to experience that. And a lot of people wouldn't even know that additional 1,000 horsepower was even there. So stay tuned next week to find out exactly why that iPad Pro, the M1 iPad Pro, has actually, as you can tell, annoyed me a little bit. There is loads of content I now have planned off the back of that spring-loaded event. I'm going to be ordering all the stuff that I need to give you the best buying advice possible. I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on it and comparing things and telling you what's good, what's not good, what to buy, what not to buy. It's a very exciting time ahead, and that's even before we get to WWDC in June. Now, my last video was a little bit different. It was talking about the reasons why people don't like the M1 chip, and I settled on a few reasons why I thought that might be the case. So keep watching for a link to my video about why people don't like the M1. But until next time, thank you as always for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.